Well, again, I want to thank the American Chemical Society for coming here and spending this time with us for a lot of reasons. Certainly helps me as a journal editor to meet all the folks that very often work behind the scenes to make my job and my life a lot easier. But all of us probably have our own story of involvement with the American Chemical Society, and I won't bore you with my history, except it goes back many years, and I remember well my first national meeting, my first regional meeting, and all the things that ACS has done to further my career and make me as more successful since that time. So again, thanks to ACS, and now as editor of a journal, well, it's just fantastic what resources they bring to the table. I want to introduce a person who's here in the audience, and that's Lorene Kleinschmidt. She also makes my life a lot easier. She's assists with the journal operation over in Meyer Hall, and without her we would be very hard pressed to put those issues together, I can tell you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about publishing in the Journal of Ag and Food Chemistry, but I will try to make comments that are general and I think applicable to many of the journals in the ACS family. And just to remind you, I believe there's 39 journals now that ACS publishes. And we all kind of get together at least once a year and trade stories about what works and what doesn't. So there's a lot of crosstalk that authors may not realize between the editors and associate editors of journals. Also in the audience earlier today was one of our associate editors, Taka Shibamoto from Environmental Talks. I don't think Taka's with us right now, but he'll be here in and out during the day. You can ask him questions as well. So anyway, this is what we do in Journal of Ag and Food. We do have categories. Somebody mentioned the usefulness of categories, bringing together content on the title and page of the journal. The ones in bold are our principal categories. We do a lot of publishing on analytical methods, on bioactive constituents, particularly antioxidants. In fact, here in the audience, one of our very frequent authors, Dr. Ed Frankel's down here in the front row, has written articles on olive oil recently, but going back on antioxidant methods for evaluating food components. We also cover chemical changes during processing and storage, and composition of food and feeds, and just general food chemistry and biochemistry, plus a number of other categories. I think we probably have too many, and we're going to be talking about ways maybe to focus somewhat in the future. So maybe there's 5, 7 categories instead of this number. One thing that's really different about certainly our journal now than say 15 or 20 years ago is the international scope of it. Well over half, in fact the majority now of our manuscripts come from overseas. And so we've had to expand our associate editors, and now we have 10 altogether. 5 are from North America, and the other 5 are from spread around the world, from China, Germany, Australia, Spain, and Denmark. And even among the ones that are located in North America, they have contacts back with international contacts in most cases. For example, Dr. Shibamoto does a lot of work in Japan and has good colleagues there, and Dr. Ho is similarly well placed in Taiwan, which is another contributor to the journal. So the internationalization of these journals has just been fantastic, and it makes it a little difficult to coordinate and make uniform our review and policy and criteria for acceptance, but we work at it and have frequent contact with our associate editors. One thing that was brought up in the early session was citations as a criterion, a hallmark for different journals. This is the performance of ACS in terms of total citations over the years. For at least the first half of this period, the citation, the impact factor increased very dramatically for the journal. It's somewhat leveled off in the second 5 years, and we're looking at that, trying to figure out, do we want to tweak our system some way to increase the impact factor? All journal editors pay attention to that. ACS pays attention to it. But quite realistically, I'm happy with our performance in total citations and impact factor over the last period. We do more perspectives, we do more reviews. Those can increase your impact factor considerably as a journal. We're not doing that just for impact factor, but also because we think it's a good thing to do, is to bring content together, as was mentioned in the last period, to help people you know, find out what's going on in their field. We look a lot at which articles are most cited, and we try to learn from that. One of the articles, for example, was on antioxidant assays, written by Ron Pryor with USDA, and that was cited 557 times, which is pretty good. And so that's one area, bioactive constituents in foods. A second area was on a carcinogen that's formed by heating in foods, acrylamide. Most of us have heard about that. And that was cited almost the same number of times. Ed, I hope I'm not leaving any of yours out, because I know some of you, your articles have been very well cited as well. So that just gives you an example. We look at this frequently. This is just in the last 10-year period, and try to learn from it what is being cited and how effective our manuscripts have been in that regard. Another thing that, I mentioned it in the earlier period, that more people are reading these journals than just other scientists. So that's a major change, at least certainly for us. An article, in this case, on organic and conventional growth systems and their effect on the content of antioxidants in onions and phenolic acids in carrots and potatoes. Well, that's kind of bread and butter material. A lot of people are interested in that. Which foods will I get the most benefit in terms of antioxidant level and things of that nature? So this article was picked up by all of these newspapers around the world. And that's kind of a mixed blessing if you're an author. Yes, it's good in the sense that your work is getting out and you're being recognized by the popular media, but also each one of these newspapers will probably be calling you and want a direct quote or some inside perspective on your work, so they can kind of chase you around somewhat, and that's the mixed blessing about this. You have to be ready for it. You have usually 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities in your life to really talk to the media directly, so you want to be schooled and ready and prepared when those calls come. But this is certainly a major thing in publishing. This is just another example of the same thing in a different area. We've also started publishing more manuscripts on the chemistry behind biofuels and bio-based products. And one article was on biodiesel from feather meal, chicken feathers. Well, chickens have become a favorite food worldwide, everybody producing and consuming chickens. That means there's this mountain of feathers to deal with, byproducts, so to speak. And 5 to 10% of the feather weight is oil. So if you can recover that oil, you can have a source of biodiesel. So that was picked up by, predictably, a lot of media that tend to publish in this area of biofuels, popular media. A similar article from the same group at the University of Nevada was on coffee grounds. Also contain a lot of oil. So if you can extract that oil and get it together, you've got another source of biodiesel. So both were very well cited. The journal does a lot of things to kind of remind authors that we're here. We celebrate the important anniversary events, for example. In 2012, that will be our 60th anniversary of the Journal of Ag and Food Chemistry. And to highlight that, we'll have a symposium at the Denver meeting, ACS meeting, and with a number of speakers, mainly in this bioactives in food theme that seems to be particularly popular, and one, incidentally, that we work on a lot here in this group of facilities at the Robert Mondavi Institute, as well as elsewhere on the campus. And then we'll publish that symposium in 2012 in a journal spotlight issue to, again, just remind people that we're here and reach more authors by these various mechanisms and readers. Okay, so I was asked to address a couple of things. One is, how do you choose a journal? Really an important fundamental concept when you're getting ready to publish. And what I advise, and certainly I've passed it on to my students, is you want to aim high. Go for the most prestigious journal that might be interested in your finding. Sometimes the only way to find that out is to send the manuscript to Science or Nature and be willing to accept. It'll probably get rejected. They reject 70–80% of what comes in. But they might accept it, and you might learn from that review what would be acceptable in the future. So aim high, Science, Nature, and the chemistry areas. Of course, JAX is still the #1, and in our field, agriculture and food, JAG and food chemistry is #1 in many of the categories. So you want to aim high. And secondly, you want to look at where are other people in your area of research publishing. That's a good tip on what journal would be the right outlet for your work. So just simply reading the literature, keeping up on it, and no longer reading it, but viewing it and hearing it, I guess now from the previous discussion, is very important. And you want to evaluate the journals. You might have a short list of 3 or 4 places to publish. You might look again at their citation performance, their impact factor, and accessibility. Are they being read in the parts of the world that you want to reach, where your readership for your piece of work might reside? So all these things are important, and thanks to ACS, we've got really a worldwide network with offices in many parts of the world that can help us penetrate those markets. A lot of people overlook the cover letter. For our journal, and I think many others, it's a requirement that the authors say what is new and significant about the work. And what I get is, very often I'll get a cover letter and say, here's my manuscript, and let me know when you accept it. The authors don't take advantage of that. I read it as an editor. I want to know what's new and exciting about this piece of work. One reason is I'm always looking for things that might be newsworthy, and I can pass that on to ACS. They have a separate group that kind of picks up on new articles that come out and push them out to the media. So if I see something that's really newsworthy, a breakthrough type thing that would be of general interest, I want to put that forward. So pay close attention to the cover letter. First, see if it's a requirement. Secondly, pay attention to it and put it out there. It's a tool that's underutilized, can be very helpful to you. Oops. And then preparing a paper. Well, that's a lengthy title, so topic. So I'll just list some of the things that I feel are important. In preparing a paper, I would look at several recent manuscripts in your subject matter area to see how other authors have gone about organizing their topic in a particular journal that you're aiming for. That doesn't mean you have to follow their lead, but you'll get a lot of tips from that. I probably should have put on here, prepare an outline. That's always in the first place that we all start there. And preparing an outline might include just following the subject categories that the journal that you're aiming toward uses. They're all pretty much the same: introduction, material and methods, results, discussion, and maybe a concluding sentence or two about the importance, and then literature search, and then of course the figures and tables. And sometimes it's good advice if you're not sure where to start in writing a manuscript. Start at the back end and get all the figures and tables in place, all organized, and then start writing your text around those. As an editor, I find that I often skip through the first part of the paper and go right back to the figures and tables to see if it falls within the scope of the journal. Is there enough chemistry there? Just a lot of things that I look for and that I'll see in the figures and tables. So that's another thing to do. Make sure you check the author guidelines, read the ethical guidelines for the journal about making sure, for example, that all your co-authors are well apprised of what you're submitting on their behalf. And in fact, this one is often overlooked, and it's extremely important. I want to talk about it for a minute. Have somebody else read your manuscript and edit it. It may be the co-authors, they'll help a lot. It may be a colleague. In some cases, if you're not sure you're sending it to the right journal, or you're not aiming for the right journal, send the abstract to the editor or an associate editor, and they'll read it and get back to you offline and say, yeah, this looks like it could go in the journal, and that could save you a lot of effort. But having this step done well, it really increases your chance of acceptance. A lot of organizations, I worked for the USDA for many years, have an internal system of peer review. A lot of departments in academia used to have that system. I say used to because it's really too much work for most of them. But some sort of way to have it reviewed can be extremely helpful. Make sure all your co-authors have read the manuscript. We're having a lot of trouble, particularly overseas, with co-authors that come back and say, I didn't know that my work was sent to your journal. What do I do now? And so that's a requirement, and it's written in the guidelines, but some people skip it. And then you go ahead and submit it online. So I probably missed a lot of points, and maybe in discussion we can bring up some other things that prospective authors should be thinking about as they prepare their manuscript. So why do we publish? That was brought up in the first session. It's very simple. If it isn't written, it doesn't exist. And you could spend your career in graduate school or in your profession doing all this great work, but if it's not written, it doesn't exist. So make sure you get on the peer review system early and frequently through your career. So anyway, thank you very much. Those are my brief comments, and we'll come back hopefully with some QA and discussion on things that maybe I didn't cover that you feel are important. Thank you.